everyone, welcome to this video. Today I have a new tutorial for you. We're going to create a very simple weekly habit tracker in Google Sheets. First, I'm going to show you how it works, all the features that we're going to add into it, and then we're going to build this whole thing together from scratch, starting with a blank spreadsheet. So if you're interested, you can just keep watching, and I'm also going to leave the link to the template in the description in case you want to take a look at the formulas, but I think it will be more fun if you follow along and build it yourself. So let's get into it. So the way the template is going to work is you're going to start by setting the date in which you want your week to begin. So you're going to double click on this cell and then you're going to pick any date from the calendar. And as you can see, dates for the entire week will be filled automatically down here. So whatever date you select, that's going to be the first day. And then over here, we're going to start adding habits. So let's do wake up early. And then you're going to select the number of days that you want to complete this habit this week. So let's say we want to do that 5 times. And what's going to happen is as soon as I check 5 boxes, my percentage is going to reach 100%. So this isn't a daily habit. I don't have to check every single box. If I check 5 boxes, I'm going to reach 100%. So every single row is going to work exactly the same way. And we're also going to create a progress bar at the top that's going to track our overall progress for the week. So with every box that I check, my overall percentage is going to increase and my progress bar is going to move. And finally, we're also going to make sure that whenever we reach 100%, our percentage over here turns green. So those are all the features that we're going to add into this template. And if you're ready to build this with me, you can go ahead, open a blank Google Sheets spreadsheet, and we can get started. So before we begin, I want to mention one very important thing. If you're following along, make sure that you're doing everything in exactly the same cells that I'm doing it, just so that if you run into any issues, your formulas will look exactly like mine and you will be able to easily compare them. So let's begin. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create some layout. So I'm going to select cell B2 and I'm going to type start date. So down here, this is where my start date is going to go. So I'm going to select cell B2 and B3 and I'm just going to give those a border. So I'm going to click on borders. I'll just make it black so it's noticeable. And then I'm going to select outer borders. And then I'm going to make some room for my habit tracker. So I'm going to select everything from cell B5 all the way to cell K16. So once I have that selected, again, I'm going to give it a border. So I'm going to click on borders and then outer border. So now that we have an idea of where everything's going to go, we're going to start by adding our mini calendar and we're going to create our date sequence down below. So let's do the calendar first. We're going to select cell B3 and we're going to click on data, data validation, and then we're going to select add rule. And from this criteria dropdown, we're going to click on it and we're going to select the option that says is valid date. And then down here, if the data is invalid, we're going to choose to reject the input because we only want to have dates in here. And then we're going to click on done. And then we're going to close this sidebar. And apparently nothing's going to happen, but if you double click on this cell, a mini calendar will pop up. And the same thing is going to happen if you select cell B3 and you press enter. The same calendar will pop up. So once we have that, we're going to pick a date. You can pick any date that you want. So I'm going to do August 11, for example. And as you can see in my example, I actually formatted the date so it's prettier. You can see the weekday, you can see the month. So let's go ahead and do that. So with cell B3 selected, we're going to click on format, number, and then we're going to go all the way down to custom date and time. So as you can see, if you scroll down, you're going to see a bunch of different options that you can select. My favorite one is this one. You get the weekday as an abbreviation, you get the month as an abbreviation, the day and the year. So you can go ahead and pick the one that you like. And then we're going to click on apply. And I'm just going to make this column a bit wider, column B, so you can see the full date. Now, before we continue, I want to make sure that everything that I add from now on is always aligned in the middle because this is bothering me a bit. So I'm going to select the entire sheet by clicking on this gray rectangle up here, right above row number 1. So if you click on that, you select the entire sheet. So I'm going to align everything in the middle. First, I'm going to do a horizontal align. So I'm going to click on this button right here, and I'm going to select the one that says center. Then for my vertical align, I'm going to click on this one, and I'm going to choose middle. And then I'm just going to pick this text wrapping option to make sure that if the text is too long, it's going to get wrapped within the same cell. So I'm going to pick the one that says wrap. So whatever we add from now on is always going to be aligned in the middle. So once we have our start date selected, we can go ahead and create our date sequence so that whenever we change the start date, our date sequence adapts. So first, I'm going to select everything from cell D5 all the way to cell J6. And then I'm going to add an outer border just so that we remember that's the area that we're working on right now. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to add our first formula on cell D6. And before you do that, make sure that you have a start date selected on cell B3. So on cell D6, we're going to do equals, and we're going to create a sequence of dates. So we're going to type in the function sequence. I'm going to open parentheses, and I'm going to click on this question mark over here so you can see the help and you can see how this formula will be built. So the first thing that it's expecting is the number of rows. So in this case, we're only going to be working on one row. So I'm going to add the number 1. And then what I want is 7 columns because I want 7 days. So I'm going to do a comma, and then I'm going to do 7. Then I'm going to do a comma, and what this is expecting is the value where the sequence should start. So in this case, that will be our start date. So right after the comma, I'm just going to click on cell B3, and I'm going to close parentheses, and I'm going to press enter. So initially, you're going to see a bunch of numbers that don't make sense. This is a different way to represent a date. So what we're going to do is we're going to format these cells so that they actually look like dates. In the example, we have the month as an abbreviation and the day. So let's go ahead and do that here. We're going to select everything from cell D6 to cell J6. We're going to click on format, number, and then we're going to do custom date and time. So I have this one at the top because I recently used it. It's the one that has the month as an abbreviation and the day. So you can scroll down and find that same option on your list and select it, and then you can click on apply. So as you can see now, we have dates that make more sense, and if I change the start date to anything else, you're gonna see the sequence of numbers adapt. Now over here, we only have the month and the day, but we also want to be able to see the weekday. So in the example, I added that at the top. So let's go ahead and let's do that over here. So I'm gonna select cell D5, I'm gonna do equals, and I'm gonna click on cell D6, and I'm going to press enter. So now what I have up here is exactly the same date that I have down below. And all I'm going to do to display the weekday is change the formatting so that even though I have a date in here, a full date, all I'm going to be seeing is the weekday. So with cell D5 selected, I'm going to click on format, number, custom date and time, and I'm gonna find an option that has only the weekday as an abbreviation. So again, mine's on top because I just used it, but yours could be somewhere else on the list. So once you find it, you're gonna select it, and then you're gonna click on apply. So now, even though this is a full date, all I'm seeing is the weekday. So you can go ahead and test that this works by changing the start date maybe to a Monday and seeing how the weekday adapts based on the date. So now that we have this functionality on this one cell, we can easily copy and paste it into the rest of the cells. So I'm going to select cell D5. I'm going to copy using my keyboard, and then I'm going to select everything from cell E5 all the way to cell J5. And instead of pasting using my keyboard, I'm going to paste in a special way so that the borders don't get messed up. So I'm going to right click, paste special, and then I'm going to choose the option that says all except borders. So I pasted the formula and the formatting, but I didn't bring this border with me. So you can go ahead, test it again if you want, and see how it dynamically adapts based on the start date. So our date sequence is almost ready. There's just one additional thing that we need to take into consideration. So this works whenever there's a date in here. But if I delete the date on cell B3, then I'm going to get some weird random dates. So what I want to happen, as you can see in the example, is if I delete the date, I don't want to see anything. So we're going to change the formula on cell D6 so that it validates that there's actually a date in here before trying to create the sequence of numbers. So we're going to select cell D6, we're going to press enter, and we're going to edit the formula. So right after the equal sign, we're going to add the if function. We're going to open parentheses, and then we're going to type the isDate function. So we're going to do isDate, open parentheses, and immediately after, we're going to click on cell B3, we're going to close parentheses and we're going to do a comma. So what we're doing here is we're building a formula that checks if there is a valid date on cell B3. And if that's true, if there is a valid date in there, then our sequence is going to be created. So that's the formula that we built before. And then right after the last parentheses, we're going to do a comma and we're going to add what's going to happen if there isn't a valid date in there. And we don't want anything to happen. So we're just going to leave that space empty and we're going to close parentheses. So again, if there is a date on cell B3, build my sequence of numbers. If there isn't, do nothing. So take a look at the formula. You can pause the video if you need to and make sure that it looks exactly like this. And when it does, we're going to press enter. And if you don't have a date in here, everything in this area should disappear. And then if you add a date, then your sequence of numbers should be displayed properly. So now we are 100% done with our dates and we can go ahead and move on to the habit tracker section. So we're going to start by adding the checkboxes and I'm going to select everything from cell D7 all the way to cell J16. I'm going to click on insert and then checkbox. And then I'm just going to make this column smaller so it starts looking better. So I'm going to select everything from column D all the way to column J. You select the entire column by clicking on the column letter and then dragging. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to resize column D. And since I have all of them selected, they're all going to get resized at the same time and they're going to be the exact same width. So now that we have that, we're going to go ahead. Let's add a label up here. So cell B6 is going to be habits and then cell C6 is going to be number of days. So now let's go ahead and let's add one habit on cell B7. Let's do wake up early as an example. And then on cell C7, we're going to add a number of days. You can go ahead and add the same one as I do just to make sure that everything looks exactly the same. So let's do 5. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump to cell K7. And this is where our first percentage is going to go. So the way we're going to create our percentage is we're going to count the number of boxes that are checked, and then we're gonna divide that by the number of days that we were expecting to complete this habit. So we're gonna select cell K7, we're gonna do equals, and first we're gonna count the number of boxes that are checked. So we're gonna do count if open parentheses, and then we're gonna select everything from cell D7 all the way to cell J7. Then we're gonna do a comma, and we're going to do true. And then we're going to close parentheses. So the first part of our formula is counting the number of checked boxes. And we're using true because whenever a box is checked, its value behind the scenes is true. And whenever it's not checked, it's false. So the formula is counting the number of times that a value within this range is true. So I'm just going to press enter so you can see an example of how that works. So right now there aren't any checked boxes, but as soon as I'm checking boxes, that counter is increasing. So let's jump back to cell K7 and let's continue editing the formula. So I'm going to press enter. And now that I have the number of checked boxes, I'm going to divide that. So I'm going to do a slash and I'm going to divide that by the number of days that I was expecting to complete this habit. So after the slash, I'm going to select cell C7 and now I'm going to press enter. So what you're going to be seeing is a decimal number, and we're going to turn that into a percentage by selecting cell K7 and clicking on format as percent up here. And then I'm just going to get rid of the last two decimals so that it looks prettier. So with cell K7 selected, I'm going to click on this decrease decimal places button, and I'm going to do that 2 times. So that way I got rid of the 2 decimals. So now if I check 5 boxes, which is the number that I set as my goal, I'm reaching 100%. And as you can see, as soon as I'm unchecking boxes, my percentage is moving. Now there's one thing missing from our formula, and it's the validation. And what I mean by that is if we don't have a number of days on cell C7, you're going to get an error on cell K7, and that's not pretty. So what we want here is we only want this formula to execute if there's actually a number of days on cell C7. So we're going to go ahead and edit the formula on cell K7 to fix that. So I'm going to select cell K7. I'm going to press enter. And then right after the equal sign, I'm going to add if open parentheses, and I'm going to do is number, open parentheses, and then I'm going to click on cell C7. I'm I'm going to close parentheses and I'm going to add a comma. So if the value on cell C7 is a number, then go ahead and execute the formula that we had before. And then I'm going to jump to the very end of the formula right after my last C7. I'm going to do a comma and I'm going to add what I want to happen if there isn't a value on cell C7. And I don't want anything to happen, so I'm just going to leave it like that and I'm going to close parentheses. So make sure that your formula looks exactly like mine and then you can press enter. So now, when there isn't a number of days on cell C7, nothing is happening on cell K7. And if I add a number of days, then I can see my percentage. So make sure that yours works properly as well before moving on. So once the formula is working properly, we're going to go ahead and we're going to replicate this behavior on every single one of these cells down below. So we're going to copy cell K7 and then we're going to select everything from cell K8 all the way to cell K16. And then we're going to right click, paste special, and we're going to do all except borders again, just so we can make sure we're not messing up any of our borders. And apparently nothing's happening, but if you start adding numbers on every single one of these cells, you're going to notice that a percentage is going to appear. So you can go ahead and try a couple of rows and make sure that everything's working properly and that your percentage is reaching 100% as soon as you check the same number of boxes that you set as your goal. Now, in our example, you might have noticed that in this number of days section, what we have is a drop down. So with this drop down, you can either type in a number or you can use the arrows to select a number. So let's go ahead and let's add that into our template. You're going to start by selecting everything from cell C7 all the way to cell C16, and you're going to press delete on your keyboard just to make sure that we get rid of everything first. And then you're going to click on data validation, and then you're going to select the option add rule, and then from this criteria option you're going to leave it as drop down, and then option 1 you're going to delete that and you're going to add the number 1. Option 2 you're going to delete that and you're going to add the number 2, and then you're going to choose add other item, and we're going to do 3, add other item 4. So we're going to keep on doing that until we reach the number 7, because we only have 7 days in this week. And then we're going to scroll down and we're going to select the option advanced options. So you're going to click on that. You're going to scroll down and you're going to leave this, if the data is invalid, you're going to leave it as reject the input. So we only want numbers from 1 to 7 in these cells. Anything else, it'll get rejected. And then I'm going to choose the option arrow. So instead of chip, it's going to look like that. And once it looks like this, so you have your criteria drop down, you have your 7 options, reject the input and arrow. You can go ahead and click on done and close this window. And now you have a drop down in every single one of these cells that allows you to select a number. You can also type in the number and press enter. And if you try to add anything that's not a number from 1 to 7, so let's do some text, you're going to get a warning. So that's sort of a way to add an extra layer of validation so that the user only inputs numbers from 1 to 7 and nothing else. So once this is all working properly, we can go ahead and we can create our progress bar so we can track our overall progress for the week. So we're going to start by adding our overall percentage on cell D3. So I'm going to jump into the tutorial. I'm going to select cell D3 and I'm going to do equals, then average, open parentheses, and I'm going to select everything from cell K7 all the way down to cell K16, and I'm going to close parentheses and I'm going to press enter. So depending on what information you have in your example right now, you're going to be seeing a different percentage. Now there's some additional validation that we need to add to this cell to make sure that when your number of days are empty, so I'm going to select every single one of my number of days, I'm going to delete them, and when I do that, all of my percentages are gone, and what ends up happening in this cell is it's going to throw an error because it's trying to divide by 0, and that can't happen, so it displays an error. So we're going to edit the formula to catch that error and display something different instead. So I'm going to select cell D3, I'm going to press enter, and then right after the equal sign, I'm going to type in if error, open parentheses, and then I'm going to go all the way to the end of the formula. I'm going to do a comma, and I'm going to add the value that I want to display instead of the error. So in this case, I just want to do 0%, and then I'm going to close parentheses. So if this formula over here throws an error, what you're going to do instead of displaying that error is displaying this value that I added over here. So once your formula looks like this, you can go ahead, press enter, and now you're going to see a 0. So let's format it so that it looks like a percentage. So I'm just going to click on format as percent, and then I'm going to get rid of the 2 decimal places using this decrease decimal places button right next to it. So I'll just click on that twice. So if I bring back all of this information and I start playing with these checkboxes, my percentage is going to move. So what we're going to do next is we're going to create a progress bar in this area that's connected to this percentage, so that when this percentage moves, the progress bar moves as well. So we're going to start by selecting everything from cell A3 all the way to cell K3, and we're going to merge those cells together using this merge cells option up here. So I'm going to click on that, and then in that big cell, I'm going to do equals. Then I'm going to do sparkline. I'm going to open parentheses, and I'm going to click on this question mark over here so I can display all the information that belongs to this particular function, the one that's going to help us build our progress bar, just so you can see why I'm adding the things that I'm adding. So the first thing that I'm going to add into this is my data. So right after the parentheses, I'm going to click on cell D3. Then I'm going to do a comma. I'm going to open curly braces, and I'm going to add a set of options that's going to help me build my progress bar. So the first one is going to be the chart type. So I'm going to open quotations, then I'm going to type chart type. That's 2 T's. Make sure that you don't miss any of those T's or it won't work. Then I'm going to close quotations. I'm going to do a comma, and my chart type is going to be a bar. So I'm going to open quotations. I'm going to do bar, close quotations. So that's my first set of options. And then I'm going to add a semicolon before I add my next set of options. So now I'm going to let this formula know what my maximum value is going to be. So that will be 100%. So I'm going to do open quotations, max, close quotations. I'm going to do a comma, and my maximum value is going to be 100%. So I'm going to add that. I'm going to close curly braces, and then I'm going to close parentheses. So you can go ahead and take a look at the formula, make sure that it looks exactly like mine, and then you're going to press enter. And what you're going to see in this cell is a bar that matches the percentage that you have on cell D3. Now, I want to test that it works, but I have a bit of a mess down here. So I'm going to clean it up before I test that it's all working properly. So first, I'm going to uncheck every single box, and I'm going to do that all at once. I'm going to select everything from cell D7 all the way to cell J16. And on your keyboard, you're going to press the spacebar once, and that's going to check every single box. Then you're going to press it again, and that's going to uncheck every single box. So once every single box is unchecked, you can go ahead and add one habit. So let's do wake up early and then 4 days. So if I check 4 boxes, I reach 100% here, I reach 100% here. If I add a second one, let's do no TV, and let's do that twice per week. If you check 2 boxes, you reach to 100% here, you reach 100% here. So go ahead and check your own version and make sure that it's behaving properly. Now I'm gonna display this sparkline formula once again, just in case you need to take a look at it, pause the video and compare your formula against mine, because there's a lot of important syntax in here and it's very easy to mess it up. So those are all our formulas. We're done building the basic functionality. And the next step is I'm gonna make it look pretty, just like this one. And then I'm gonna add some conditional formatting so that when you check a box, the background color turns gray. That's not happening in our example right now. And then I'm also going to make sure that when we reach 100%, our percentage turns green, just like it does in the example. And I'm going to change the progress bar color so it's this pretty green instead of the orange that you get by default. So let's start with the progress bar. I'm going to select the progress bar and I'm going to press enter. And then I'm going to add an additional option into the formula. So right after the 100%, I'm going to do a semicolon. I'm going to open quotations and I'm going to type in the word color 1. Don't forget about the number 1 or it won't work. Then I'm gonna close quotations. I'm gonna do a comma. I'm gonna open quotations. And what I'm gonna add here is the hex value that represents that green color that I was using. So every color has a hex value that represents it. So I already looked up a green one that I liked. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a hash, and then you're gonna add this exact text. You're gonna do C9 DCA9. You're gonna close quotations and you're gonna make sure that you didn't mess anything up and that your formula is looking exactly like mine. So all I added is a third set of options, and what you're seeing here is a value, a hex value that represents that green color that I added. So once it looks like this, you're gonna press enter, and now your progress bar is going to be green. So now let's go ahead and bring some life into the template and make it pretty. So I'm gonna start by selecting the start date label. I'm gonna change the background color color. I'm going to use this fill color option and I'm going to choose this blue one over here. And then I'm going to change the text color to white. And then for this entire row over here, everything from cell B6 to cell J6, I'm going to change that background color to this fourth gray from left to right. And again, the text color, I'm going to do that white. And while this is still selected, I'm actually also gonna bold this row. So with that same range selected, everything from cell B6 to J6, I'm just gonna click on bold. And then the row at the top, everything from cell B5 all the way to cell J5, we're gonna do that in a lighter gray. So I'm just going to click on fill color and I'm going to pick this second gray from right to left. And this column over here, the one with our percentages, is missing a header. So I'm just going to merge together cells K5 and K6. I'm going to select them. I'm going to click on merge cells and then I'm just going to add the percent symbol so that becomes the header. And then I'm going to change the background color. I'm going to click here and I'm going to change it to this fourth gray from right to left. And then what I like to do in my templates is I like to leave a white background whenever the user is supposed to input something. And then I like to have a colored background whenever there's a formula in there, just so that the user knows which cells they're supposed to edit. So as you may recall, all of these cells here, these are formulas. So let's turn that into a colored background. We're going to select everything from cell K7 to cell K16. We're going to click on fill color and we're going to choose the second gray from right to left again. So it's looking a lot better. And now I'm just going to edit the width of the columns so that they are prettier. And this text over here, everything from cell D5 to cell J6, I'm going to select all of this and I'm going to change the font size to a smaller one. I'm going to do 9 and I'm going to press enter. And once it's smaller, I can actually make these columns a bit smaller as well. So I'm just going to select everything from column D to column J. Remember, you click and drag on the column letters so that you select the whole thing. And I'm just going to resize column D and that's going to resize all of them at the same time and make them symmetric. So you can resize your columns so that they look nice to you. And since cell D3 also has a formula in there, I'm also going to give that a colored background. So I'll just choose this second gray from right to left as well. So once you're happy with the width of your columns, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get rid of the grid lines that are there by default. And we're going to add some nice subtle borders. So we're going to go ahead and add that. First, I'm going to get rid of the borders that I added at the beginning. Those were just there for guidance. So I'm going to click on this rectangle over here, right above row 1 to select the entire sheet. And then I'm going to click on borders and I'm going to get rid of all of my borders using this clear borders option. So once they're gone, I'm going to select everything from cell B5 all the way to cell K16. And then I'm going to click on borders. And as a color, I'm going to choose this fourth gray from right to left. And then I'm going to click on outer borders. So you're not going to be able to notice them too well at first. Just hang in there a bit. Once we get rid of the harsh grid lines that are there by default, you'll be able to see it. And then we're going to select cells B2 and B3. And we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to click on borders. And with that same gray selected, I'm going to click on outer borders. And finally, I'm going to do the same thing to the percentage and the progress bar. I'm just going to select both of those, everything from cell D3 to cell K3, borders, and then outer borders. So now I'm going to get rid of the grid lines that are there by default by clicking on view, show, and then grid lines. So now you can see the borders that we added. And then I'm going to add some very subtle inner grid lines like you're seeing over here. So I'm going to select everything from cell B7 all the way to cell J16. I'm going to click on borders and I'm going to change the color to a lighter gray. The second one from right to left. And then I'm going to click on inner borders. So once I do that, as you can see, some very nice inner borders were created. Then I'm just going to add a couple more borders to make it nicer because as you can see, I don't know if you can tell, but these borders are sort of overlapping with the row at the top. I'm very obsessive about my borders and I cannot have that. So I'm gonna fix that by selecting everything from cell B5 all the way to cell K6. I'm gonna click on borders and I'm gonna select this fourth gray from right to left and then outer borders. And finally, I'm gonna wrap my entire set of checkboxes in their own little box as well. So I'm gonna select everything from cell D7 all the way to cell J16 and again borders, the same fourth gray, and then outer borders. So I think that looks so pretty compared to what we used to have before. And now we're ready to add our final touches using conditional formatting so that when you check a box, the background color of that cell changes, and when you reach 100%, the font color of your percentage turns green. So let's start with the checkbox. So first, I want to make sure that these checkboxes are lighter whenever they are not checked. So as you can see over here, boxes that are not checked are lighter. So what we're going to do is we're going to select everything from cell D7 all the way to cell J16, and we're going to change the text color. So that's the way you change the default color of your checkbox. So we're going to do this fourth gray from right to left. And now I want to make sure that when the box is checked, the color becomes darker and the background turns gray. So with that same range selected, all of my checkboxes, I'm going to click on Format, Conditional Formatting, and then from this drop down over here, Format Cells If, we're going to choose text is exactly. And as you may recall, I mentioned before that whenever a checkbox is checked, its value behind the scenes is true. And if it's not checked, it's false. So when the text is exactly true, we're going to go ahead and apply this formatting style. So I'm going to change the text color to this third gray from left to right. And then I'm going to change the fill color to the second gray from right to left. So if you have any boxes that are checked, you're going to see this formatting style being applied to them. So once your conditional format rule looks like this, you're going to click on Done, and you're going to close this. So go ahead and check that this is working properly for you. And then we're going to add our final conditional format rule. So we're going to make sure that when we reach 100%, our percentages turn green. So we're going to select everything from cell K7 all the way to cell K16. We're going to click on Format, Conditional Formatting, and then Format Cells If we're going to choose greater than or equal to. We're going to select that, and then in this cell, we're going to do 100%. And for our background color, for our fill color, we're going to choose none. We don't want that to change. And then for our text color, I'm going to select this green over here. You can do the one that you like the most. And then I'm also going to bold it. So I'm going to click on bold. So if you have any rows that have reached 100% already, you're going to notice that they will get this formatting style applied to them. So once it looks like this, you can click on done. We're going to close this. So now you can go ahead, test it, and make sure that it's only green when you reach 100%. So that's it. Those are all the features that we're going to create. You can add some final touches into this by adjusting the widths of your columns. You can adjust the height of your rows. You can actually select multiple rows at once and again adjust the height in one of them, and all of them will change. You can make this gap over here smaller, and you can also change the font that you're using. So you can do that all at once by selecting the entire sheet by clicking on this rectangle. And then as a font, I'm just going to choose Lato. I like that one for my tutorials. And I think this needs to be a bit taller. And one final tip, if you need to add new rows, because I know you're going to want to, all you have to do is insert a new row anywhere in the middle of the table without touching the first row or the last row of the table. So you can insert a new row down here, for example. And then you're going to add your habit, new habit. You're going to set the number of days. And initially it's not going to work because there isn't a formula in here. So all you have to do is copy that same cell from a different row that is working properly and then paste it over your new row, and it should be connected and it should work properly. So that's it for this tutorial. I hope you liked it. I hope you found it useful. If you made it this far and you were able to build this whole thing by yourself, I would love to know in the comments, and I would also love to know what you thought about the tutorial, if it was too easy, if it was too hard, or if you learned anything new. And this feature that we created right here is actually a part of my 12-week habit tracker. You can find that one available for purchase in my shop. In this template, you can track up to 12 weeks in the same tab. And the coolest part about it is that you can adjust your goals every week. So if you're interested in checking that template out, I'm going to leave the link to the video tour in the description. So that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. I hope you found it useful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.